Hello again, my name is Ernest Minu. Let's settle now for the details. And former President John Mahama's second witness in his election petition mounted the witness box today to testify to the happenings during the 2020 presidential polls. Michael Misawa was one of the two representatives stationed at the National Coalition Center, also known as the Strong Room of the Electoral Commission, during the December 7 elections. Now, let's get to more on what happened today. That's day 8 of the Supreme Court sitting. Court correspondent Joseph Owusu joins us on the line with more. Joseph, a lot happened in court today. Actually, we'll be going into the details, but before then, let's take excerpts of what transpired in court, and we'll be back to Joseph to break it down for us.
Issues with her in good faith and went accordingly.
You had your phones with you, is that correct?
We had
your phones, your telephones with you?
Yes, I had my phones with me. By the 8th, it was dead because I didn't carry my charger with me.
You had your computers with you, is that correct?
We had our computers.
There were journalists moving through and fro in that room, is that correct?
That's not correct.
I am putting it to you that there were people, there were journalists and key stakeholders moving through and fro in the room, and therefore you leaving was wrongful.
My Lord, there were no journalists in the room. I recall that there is a gentleman in the room who was doing videoing of what was happening, virtually there for the entire period we were there. And at some point, this gentleman was calling agents of the candidates, asking them to express their views on the process as it was happening. Of course, we declined that particular invitation. Journalists were not allowed inside that room. Now, I granted 2 interviews.
And that's Dr. Michael Misawa there testifying today in court on the 8th of the sitting. Let's go live on the phone now. Joseph Owusu is our man in court and he joins us. Joseph, a lot happened today. Tell us about the cross-examination of Misawa, first by the lawyer for the first respondent, Justin Amenuve, and then Akoto-Ampah, who is lawyer for the second respondent. It was rather short on his part, and that's Mr. Akoto-Ampah.
But the cross-examination did commence with Justin Amenuve, like you pointed out, and this examination focused mainly on issues relating to that instruction that was handed, or said to have been handed to Roger Metununu, and subsequently to Dr. Misawa, related to directions and consultations that we were supposed to go ahead and have with Mr. Mahama, with the 2020 presidential candidate. And so that was the focus, and the point he kept putting across to him was to the effect that that third instruction was never given, and that even if it was given, he had the option of not going and rather decided to go on his own because he had realized that they were losing the election. And so that was the crux of the cross-examination that was undertaken by Mr. Amenuve this morning. In terms of Mr. Akoto-Ampah, like you pointed, it was quite brief, and the direct question that he made was to the effect that he had the option also to obey that same instruction. And so what needs to be noted is that it is worth pointing out that in terms of the whole attempts to discredit the testimony of Dr. Misawa, it focused mainly on the issues related to that particular instruction. And it's worth noting that it's important in this particular matter because it is his witness, his testimony to the effect that the EC chairperson did not act in a fair manner. And he's leaving evidence to make the point that had they been allowed to have their corrections, which they had drawn to the attention of the EC chairperson, had they been allowed to raise those issues, they could have quickly have them resolved. And it's in the EC's quest to have them out of the place and go ahead to declare the results that he asked them to go and consult with the presidential candidate.
It appears the issue of Form 13 became quite controversial. Outside the court, have the legal representatives, the spokesperson, been talking about that, and what are they saying?
As far as Mr. Mohammed's side are concerned, they insist that the document that Dr. White was shown in court is not a Form 13. And it's worth noting that a Form 13 is simply a document that has the name of the presidential candidate. It has the regions also indicated, and it has their results attached to it. And so that is the document that the political party representatives, the candidates representatives in the strong room, that is the document that they are required to sign on to, and afterwards, the EC proceeds to declare the results from. So the point that Dr. Pesawait was making in his testimony, which was also advanced by Mr. Mohammed's legal team, is to the effect that they were not given the opportunity to even see that document because they had been sent or instructed to go and consult with their presidential candidates, and on their way back, they actually realized that the results had already been declared. And so he says if they had access to that form, they could have indicated on the form the concerns that they had about the results, because the form has a portion of it that allows for such complaints to be registered. As far as President Akufo-Addo's legal team is concerned, they disagree and hold the view that these are individuals who simply left the job that they were required to do because they knew that their candidate was losing the election, and not the case that they had any genuine issue that, or they were instructed, which the President side told that they could not have been instructed.
Now, the issue of instructed and whether or not Dr. Pesawait had the opportunity to directly interact with the chairperson of the Electoral Commission was also a matter of contest. Did you get any indication from the lawyers of President Akufo-Addo that they would want the other witness or the other person who was in the collation room, that is Rojo Metonunu, to mount the witness box because of how they could not extract certain information or believe that is where the details being put out by Dr. Pesawait?
I mean, the point that President Akufo-Addo's legal team makes is that, as far as they are concerned, if there was any iota of truth in that story that is being put out if there's any iota of truth in that statement that is being put out, the option would have been that the individual who is said to have put out the story himself, i.e., Mr. Rojo Metonunu, who is said to have interacted directly with the EC chairperson, that particular person would have come in to testify rather than someone who did not have the direct interaction with him. As Dr. Aine, who is the spokesperson for Mr. Mohammed's legal team, is concerned, they have the option of calling witnesses, and they have called a witness, and they have again indicated that depending on how their motion, which is due tomorrow, is dealt with, they could call further witnesses. And as far as they are concerned, what Dr. Pesawait is speaking to is the truth, and is their part of the story that he expects the court to listen to.
Just before you go, Joseph, what is going to happen tomorrow?
There's going to be legal arguments. First, even before tomorrow, by close of day today, there is a request that the Electoral Commission allows them to inspect some documents. These are, one, the summary collation sheets from all 275 constituencies, and there are those related to the original collation as well, and the Mohammed is asking to inspect those documents. And so there will be legal arguments. They will make the case for why they should be allowed to inspect. The EC and President of Patriotic Party have already indicated that they are opposed to that particular request. So their side will also be heard, and hopefully the court will give a decision on that as well.
Joseph, thank you very much for all the updates from the court, and that's court correspondent Joseph Kable. This is your election headquarters. We'll be live at the Supreme Court once they sit tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Away from the courts, Ghana's COVID-19 situation is getting worse as the new variant of the virus, which is more deadly, spreads fast and becoming the dominant strain within the community. Now, in the latest update by the Ghana Health Service, the country recorded 772 new cases, bringing active cases to 5,515, with 8 new deaths, pushing fatalities to 444 as of January 30. This trend, according to the Minister Designate for Information, Kojo Ponkuma, may get the already overstretched health facilities inundated. Now, he is therefore asking that we comply with the steps across the, across as government launches frantic efforts to get a grip on the virus.
Yes, because it comes with the science of it, the clinical trials will tell you exactly what you can do, how safe it is, and so I don't think it is. You should worry about that. If we trust it, we let us use it.
Those who cover it. So there's a second batch of questions. Now is a good time to take it. And while I wait for the second batch of questions, just a couple of comments. Now, because there is the very high possibility that as the UK variant becomes widespread, or a lot more widespread, it could overtake the traditional variant. we're noticing that it has a higher rate of spread, and it appears to be associated with a higher disease burden. It means that instead of lowering our guard or thinking that, we figured this thing out, all of us actually now have to step up our guard, because what is now around and creeping around is a bit more dire than the first one. So if your compliance level was at 5, when the manageable version was around, now that what appears to be a more dire version is around, I honestly do think they have to step up your compliance level beyond the 5 and not drop it. So we are pleased to see that the wearing of masks is gone up, but we think we are not there yet. A lot more compliance needs to be urged so that we get the results.
And my colleague Manuel Cranton joins us live with more from that news conference. Manuel, we know that there are some health workers who are threatening to lay down their tools over the compensation for frontline health workers. Was there a response on that at that news conference?
Indeed, Ernest, there was a response to that particular call. You remember that sometime last week we had some workers at the Confanoche Teaching Hospital, and they were claiming that their insurance packages were not being given to them. And indeed, they mentioned again that some people who were not even considered frontline health workers, people who were not considered frontline health workers were benefiting from the insurance packages. And so that concern was brought to bear at the press conference. And Dr. Patrick Boaje's response was that, indeed, the issue is not lost on the Ghana Health Service. They actually work with a list of frontline health workers, the list which is updated every month. And so people are not, as it were, by default, entitled to the packages as have been, allocated to them. But you need to have been on duty in the month under review to be able to get the package. And that's what he said. But again, he said there is a systematic process that they were in the process of releasing to all those who deserved and were yet to receive their packages. Ernest.
There was also the indication that spread in workplaces is actually on the rise. What exactly was the explanation given? But Manuel, before you give me a response to that, I want us to listen to Dr. Patrick Boaje explain the issue of the compensation and remuneration allowances to frontline health workers.
In terms of the compensation, we have defined who a frontline health worker was. The president had given a tax rebate that was up to December last year. And we had frontline workers. The frontline worker data is generated on a monthly basis based on who was on duty, who at the month was frontline worker. A lot of people have been paid. We still have some people who have a few challenge with account numbers and so on. And there's a lot of work going on to make sure that they are all paid. And so yes, we know that there are people who have not been paid, and there are specific reasons why, and they are all being assured that the payment is currently being done, so that we all be paid very soon.
So now let's talk about the issue of spread in workplaces. What was the explanation, Manuel?
Indeed, Ernest, there was an explanation about the number of active cases. In fact, the fresh cases that we are recording, majority of those cases are coming from our offices. And you remember that in the president's 23rd address to the nation, he emphasized that offices and other corporate organizations should, as a matter of urgency, consider rolling out a shift system to be able to allow for a sort of decongestion of the various offices as government works at stemming the tide the tide within the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was it. But even more importantly, also is a survey that was conducted by the Ghana Health Service over the course of last week, which established that some 42% of people in the Greater Accra region are actually, abiding by the safety protocol of wearing the face mask. And the last of the, these surveys, which was conducted in 2020, was done actually in October 2020. And at the time, just 10% of the people who were surveyed were complying and were adhering to the wearing of the face mask. This time around, you're doing some 42% of the people who were surveyed complying by the directive and the protocol of face mask wearing. And so 42% wearing their masks correctly, and then some 36% wearing the mask but not wearing the mask correctly. So you'd have had some of them wearing on their chin, and so on and so forth. But some 22% of the people who were sampled were not wearing their masks at all. And that gave the need for the Ghana Health Service to caution and emphasize that people must stick to the protocol of wearing the face mask. In its entirety, some 78% of people who were sampled in the Greater Accra region, according to the Ghana Health Service, give an indication of, an intention to wear the mask, whether they were wearing the mask correctly or not wearing the mask correctly, Ernest.
Thank you very much, Manuel Quentin, for bringing us details from that news conference organized at the Information Ministry together with the Ghana Health Service. Meanwhile, a researcher at the West Africa Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens, Dr. Yaw Bediako, says the center is sequencing samples of positive patients to determine the most dominant variant spreading in our communities. According to Dr. Bediako, this will inform government and health authorities on the most appropriate vaccine to procure.
Sequencing is a technique that allows us to study the genome or the DNA of a particular organism. And so it's basically, if you think of DNA as a code and a code of letters, sequencing allows us to read this code and to decipher what the code means. This virus is mutating, and over time it will continue to mutate. The vaccines have been developed based on one variant of the virus. Now, over time, as the virus mutates, there may be, unfortunately, a situation where the virus mutates away from what the vaccine can recognize. If that were to happen, that would be a serious issue for countries that are trying to use the vaccine. There are a few vaccines available. There may be a few more vaccines on the market soon. Each of those vaccines may target slightly different variants. And so it's important as a country for us to have a clear idea of what the variants circulating in Ghana look like, so that when the Ministry of Health goes to procure a vaccine, they have enough information to ensure whatever they procure is actually going to work for COVID in Ghana. If we want to do this quicker and on a larger scale, we need to expand our capacity. I'm happy to say that in addition to WACBIP, there is sequencing going on at Noguchi and at UHAS. But in many ways, their facilities are not much larger than ours. This is the level of capacity we have in Ghana. And I'd also comment that there is a certain significant cost also associated with sequencing. So the flow cells that you saw her load on, which are consumables, they are things you load, and then once you're done with the run, you discard. That on its own costs $1,000. And indeed, all the reagents, they may not look like a lot of volume. All the little reagents you have to add, the magnetic bead for pulling out the DNA. When you put all of that together, the cost of sequencing a single sample is anywhere from about $100 to $150. So the 100 samples that I said we can do a week equates to $10,000 of cost. So if you want to increase capacity or increase the speed with which you do things, that has to be followed with significant investment from the government or from the private sector.
Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association, Dr. Titus Bayo, says we cannot conclude that schools are safe until we have a systematic way of assessing the situation in our schools. Speaking on PM Express, Dr. Bayo explained that to the extent that the new variant also affects children and the impact being felt, health officials need a full assessment on schools. He also added that schools alone cannot be a safe place whilst the members of the communities are infected.
But we have followed what has happened in Konfanochi, and it's a disturbing trend. And I should say that what is there may be a replication of what can be found in any major teaching hospital in the country.
Okay.
And so I have a problem with statistics that tells us that because few students have reported problems, the problem in the school is little. Until we have had a systematic way of assessing the burden in the school, we cannot make that conclusive statement. So to the extent that this new variant is affecting children, and we can see the impact on children, we need a full assessment of schools to be able to make a statement on the impact on schools. But like we said, the school cannot be a safe haven alone if the entire community is still infected. So we have to tackle the community as well as tackle the school. But we should not base our data on only what we have and say that because we haven't had a report, it means it's not there. If you really want to know whether there are issues in your schools, then you go search for it. Because I have colleagues whose kids have tested positive in their schools. I have friends who have complained their other parents' kids have tested positive in the school. So until you assess in the school, you cannot make that conclusive statement based on only what comes to your facilities.
The Food and Drugs Authority says it has approved the first herbal medicine for a clinical trial for COVID-19 treatment. The medicine, known locally as Nimimba, was submitted by researchers from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, that's a School of Public Health, in September last year. In a statement, Chief Executive of the FDA, Delise Miridako, said the authority gave the go-ahead for the clinical trial last month. There's more in this Newsdesk report.
In search for a treatment for the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, researchers from the School of Public Health at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology submitted a clinical trial application in September 2020 to assess the safety and efficacy of Cryptolysis sanguinolenta as a potential treatment for COVID-19. This follows results from laboratory studies conducted by the KNUST research team, which points in the direction of possible clinical benefits. The FDA, after detailed assessment of the application, gave the requisite regulatory authorization for the conduct of the trial as per the mandate outlined by Part 8, Sections 150 to 166 of the Public Health Act 2012, Act 851, which gives the authority the legal mandate to regulate clinical trials of drugs, herbal medical products, cosmetics, and medical devices. The trial will be conducted at 2 sites. To this end, the public is admonished to report any suspicious activity on FDA-regulated products to the authority via any of our platforms.
Still on COVID-19, but to Parliament now, the Speaker, Alban Badbin, is warning that he may be forced to disclose the names of about 60 members of Parliament who have refused to undergo testing for COVID-19. The Speaker has also confirmed that some MPs have tested positive for the virus. Although Mr. Badbin did not disclose the names of the MPs affected, he admonished members of the House to take the COVID-19 safety protocols seriously and strictly adhere to them. Now, the revelation by the Speaker follows a 3-day health screening exercise organized for the MPs last week. Less than a third of the House participated in the event, forcing the exercise to be extended.
My directive that all members subject themselves to the test has not yet been complied with by over 60 members of Parliament. It is true, as the majority leader has just stated, that we are not all safe. Even in the House, some members are afflicted by COVID-19. You may not know who the person is because of the protocols, issues of confidentiality. We are not disclosed those who are now COVID-19 positive, but we have some of us members should take the protocol seriously. In fact, when I was entering, I myself had to signal to members to respect the physical distancing. The physical distancing protocol. And I saw them immediately move apart. So members should take it serious.
In other news, city authorities in Kumasi say the refusal of traders to relocate from the central market has stalled progress on the second phase of the KJTR redevelopment project. Chairman of the Kumasi City Markets Project, Nana Ejeni Mboaten, is worried funds have been released since February 2020, but the project is yet to commence. He revealed this when the city authorities engaged stakeholders in what they call the Let the People Know campaign.
I declare the redevelopment project of the Kumasi Central Market Phase 2 duly launched.
President Akufo-Addo in May 2019 cut short for work to commence on the second phase of the KJTR Central Market project. Work has, however, slowed due to failure of traders to voluntarily move to satellite markets allocated by the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly. Nana Ejeni Mboaten is the liaison officer for Otumfor on the Kumasi KJTR Central Market project.
In the phase 2, the UKEF said we should show the social impact of the people that we are moving, where we are taking them to, and be sure that what it is. Arising out of that was a €1 million budget for that purpose. KMA, in consultation with these affected traders, visited the sites of Abinchi, railways, and racecourse. We've got the places ready. To move in, they said, now you're 12 and they are still not moving. So it's like, let the people know of the cause and effect of these things happening when people are all littered around in the streets and pavements.
At a program dubbed the Let the People Know campaign, city authorities and representatives of Malaysia have been meeting with stakeholders on the state of the project. The review, €87 million have already been released since February 2020 for the project execution.
Some challenges of the day has made the project not fully occupied. Some on the side of the contractor, some on the side of the traders. The government has allowed the first phase of the money to be released since February 2020. We have still not got access to the land to start work. And just seeing that €87 million since February 2020, not even commenced. And in April, Oseche Mensah and the team and the government will have to go for second phase. What do you go to tell the donors or where you go to borrow the money that you've not even used phase 1, but you still want money?
Kumasi Mayor Osei Bianchi claims though about 40% of the area needed for the construction were released, the Christmas festivities affected the initial plan.
As at now, we've been able to give the contractor more than 40% of the space that is needed. But before the Xmas, you are all aware that a lot of arrangements were made to move some of the traders so as to give the area to the contractors. But most of the traders pleaded that that is the period that they also get their money. So we all agreed that we'll do it after the Christmas. So now we will have a meeting with the RESEC and that of the leadership of those who are working at Central Market Phase 2, so as not to destroy their business and also not to impede on the project that is going on.
Prince Apia reporting.
The OT Regional Expanded Executive Committee for the new Patriotic Party has declared its support for Joshua Makuba, the regional minister designate for the region. The regional executive of the party are also asking for the support from chiefs and elders in the region for the nominee ahead of his vetting. The party also expressed appreciation to the president for considering a differently abled grassroots person for such a high office. Correspondent Peter Sene reports.
The expanded executive committee of the new Patriotic Party in the Oti region held its maiden meeting after the December 2020 elections to, among other things, take stock of events before and after the December 7 polls. Also on the front burner was the party's poor showing in the parliamentary elections in the region. The party says they fully endorse the nomination of Joshua Ngainan Makubu for the position of the regional minister.
We are glad to indicate that one of the greatest heartwarming issues that came up during our meeting is the appointment of the Oti regional minister designate by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the President of the Republic of Ghana.
And you're watching Joy News Today with me, Anas Mini. We're taking a short break. When we're at time, we'll bring you business. Don't go away. Now, an energy strategist is calling on government to make deliberate efforts in industrializing renewable energy to achieve the 10% target set by 2030. According to Dr. Yusuf Suleimana, fossil fuel is a finite resource and will be scarce in the next 2 to 3 decades. He made these comments while stating reasons why renewable energy should be embraced globally. Now, he was speaking on Talking Business with Inshirado on Joy Prime.
2 reasons why globally everybody should embrace renewable energy. Number 1, the current fossil fuel regime that we have, that is the world of hydrocarbons. Everybody knows that this is a finite resource. Finite resource in the sense that it's going to come to an end. And once we have this behind our mind or at the back of our mind that this is a resource that is not going to live with us forever. In fact, most reservoirs, that is oil production wells, give it 2 decades or 3 decades, they will begin to decline. And so as we go consistently, number 1, the fact that this is a finite resource. Number 2, the fact that there is rapid increase in global temperature. It is not a myth, it is not a hoax, it is a reality where we have disparity, so much variation in weather conditions. And so that's why 2015, they had to force in this landmark agreement they call climate change. And what it means is that all nations have to agree to make sure that they minimize the emission of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, because these are the main contributors to global warming. However, like we excellently ask, how do we juxtapose this with our industrialization? In fact, first of all, we have to go through the transition. And I'm saying that because my understanding is that Ghana, somewhere 2010, we said we were going to achieve about 10% by 2020. And we came to 2020 and we could not boost up to 2%. That is so unfortunate. Now we have extended this target to 2030. Now, are we going to do something different, this target? If we are able to do something different, then we are in to achieve this target. And I can tell you, Inshira, we have huge potential. We only need to give the space. Let's open the space. Let's give the required environment. The government has to make deliberate efforts.
And that was Dr. Yusuf Suleimana, energy strategist and senior oil production operations specialist. And now some traders, the Dr. Menson Market in Kumasi, have endorsed any arrangement by authorities to minimize the spread of COVID-19 at the market. The traders fear the poor adherence to COVID-19 protocols at the market could escalate the spread. The Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly has indicated reintroduction of the shift system of trading as COVID-19 cases increase in the country. Press PR reports.
The KMA has set February 1 to begin decongestion of unauthorized structures and trading in the Central Business District. The city center is choked with vehicular and human traffic, devaluing the beauty of Ghana's proverbial garden city. Some traders want the exercise carried out in earnest.
We support 100% because
we are in total support of this step. This is because my products are all available on the street, causing a loss on the side of those in this market who obey the rules.
We will be thankful if the KMA would sack these people from the streets.
And that's it for business. Sports is up next. Stay with us.
Now to the Ghana Premier League, and Ken Faisal are back on track after a stuttering start to the league season. At the weekend, they came from 3 goals down to beat Brekum Chelsea in a Week 11 encounter. This time, they're up against Olympics, who beat Hearts of Oak in the Manchester Derby on Sunday. Here's a preview by the Joy Sports team. Two high-flying clubs, Great Olympics and Ken Faisal, clash at the Accra Sports Stadium for midweek action on match day 12 of the Ghana Premier League. Olympics return to the same stadium they dispatched their arch-rivals Hearts of Oak. In that derby game, Olidade shone brightest, with goals from Gladson Awako and Maxwell Abe. It was the first time Olympics had beaten Hearts in the league for 17 years, and Yao Preko's men will be full of confidence after climbing into the top 4. Olympics, however, have been dealt with a major blow due to the absence of skipper Gladson Awako. The midfielder would not be featuring against Ken Faisal after picking up an accumulation of cards. Right back Philip Saki returns to the squad after missing the derby against the Phobians, also due to suspension. For Ken Faisal, they staged the most remarkable Ghana Premier League comeback in recent history after coming from 3 goals down to beat Brekum Chelsea 4-3. For the first time since March 5, the Inshallah boys are out of the relegation zone ahead of a match day and are full of belief. Coach Andy Sinnerson was very impressed after securing his first win and vowed to bring Ken Faisal back on track. Captain of the side Kwame Pepra, who scored a hat-trick against Chelsea, would also have one eye on the Golden Boot race. The striker currently has 7 goals, just 2 behind Yawisi Taylor of Karela United. Michael Ekufu still remains on the injury list for the Kumasi-based club. And on the other hand, victory for Olympics will move them to join top of the league table alongside Karela United. Well, that's how we wrap up the sports here. We're bringing you more on the midweek fixtures that are taking place on our subsequent bulletins. My name is Oreko Wampofo, and the Joy News today continues right after this.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Showbiz here on Joy News today. Now, Highlife musician Kwame Eugene has revealed he will be releasing more music to mark his 24th birthday. Speaking to Joy News, the musician says he is grateful for life and looks forward to greater things ahead.
I think I would say the achievement is consistency, being able to stay in the game. Because I mean, I didn't envision this 4 years ago. After having Angela, I knew, I had good talent, but how to keep it, how to sustain it was the issue. And I think being able to hold on to it till now is a big achievement.
Today is a special day in your life, you know that, right? Yeah. Today is +1.
+1.
Would you say, looking back as a musician, with the height you've taken, with the height you've gained, with you being a household, you have lived your purpose of wanting to be a musician?
I think I've done some. I'm not finished yet, actually. I think I'm about to set off. I'm about to do bigger things by God's grace. So this is just the preamble of everything you guys have done. I'm ready to get started.
On that note, we end Showbiz here on Joy News today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Becky, for bringing us Showbiz. And that's our show for this afternoon. Many thanks for your company. Please log on to myjoyonline.com. We have more stories there. I'm Ernest. Good afternoon.